You should have this gold paper in front of you. Please make sure to have your name, period, and table color on it. And I want to point something out with this objective tracker. This time you'll see a section that says checked off by Mrs. Mallory. You need to make sure to have each of these checked off for points. I want to make sure you can do each of these skills before you move on to your monster pot. With the first one, you're going to check this off first independently, and then the rest can be all checked off together. If you want to make a little note of that for yourself, you're welcome to. Alright, so filling in the first one, I can create 5 coils that are even and consistent. What you need to know, so write this down, is that the thickness of each coil should be about the thickness of your middle finger, and you're going to roll coils the length of half your arm, meaning from your hand down to your elbow. So I just want to point out on this visual rubric, you want your coils to be at this A. See, they're not lumpy and bumpy, they're even and consistent. They're the thickness of your middle finger. For the B, you can see that things are starting to get a little bit uneven. They're a little lumpy and bumpy. C is even worse, and D is where we have it really flat on one side. We see the fingerprints and it's not consistent. So you will roll 5 even consistent coils, the length of half your arm, and you'll bring them up to me. I also have on this guide, this would be too thin, and later I'm going to explain what I mean by that when I show you the demo. This is just right. Again, you can place your middle finger next to it and you can see that it's the same thickness. And this would be too thick. It would make your pot way too thick for this assignment. I also have these coils that you're welcome to just come grab from me to have next to you as an example so you can see what thickness your coil should be. So at any point, you're welcome to grab these from me. Next one I want you to fill in, I can create a smooth pot on both, sorry, I printed those wrong, the outside and the inside of the coil pot. So you're going to use fingers, paddles, or a rib to blend. Again, I'll show you that in just a second with the demo. I can create a coil pot that shows movement, so it either needs to get wider or thinner, like smaller. You do this by placing coils on the outside if you want it wider, or inside if you want it thinner, smaller. I guess I could say narrower. Okay, I can create a coil pot that is 2.5 inches tall minimum with even wall thickness. So you will need to use ruler to measure. And for this assignment, this is the only one where our walls will be a bit on the thicker side. So they won't be at this 1/4 inch. For this assignment, the walls should be between 5/16 to 3/8. This assignment, they'll be a little bit on the thicker side, and that is okay. I can follow directions for grading procedures. You will check off each skill building step with me, this is how you are going to get the points for it. I will literally check each of these off. You'll bring them up to me. And then you will complete the objective tracker and turn in to basket for points. Now, this is a skill builder, so you do not need to keep these pots. But if you look down here, for bonus points, I can include additive textures to make my pot look like something more than just a pot. You can keep the pot, I can fire it for you, and it will just be a bonus pot for you. Or you could just wedge it back up when you're done. But if you'd like bonus points, you're going to add something to it. So on the back, I've given you some examples. You could simply add some ears, some eyes, something to it to make it more than just a basic pot. Do you have to keep this pot? No, you don't. But if you want to, you are welcome to. All right, so to make the pot, you're going to start by making your coils. So I like to just tear some clay off. And the best way to make your coils, so squeeze the clay into a coil-like shape to begin with. And using broad strokes, so clear everything out that's in your way on your desk, and you want to roll the clay with nice and broad strokes. I like to kind of spread my fingers out and pull my hands out. This helps hold the coil. And I'm going to pause every so often and check that it's the right thickness. I can see it's even all the way throughout. And it's about the length of half of my arm, so I know this is good and it's ready to go. Using one of the clear bats from just over here, just place your coils until you have all 5. You'll then bring all 5 up to me to check off. So again, I just shape the clay into a coil shape first to begin with. If I don't use broad strokes, let me show you, this is often what happens to students, that they just roll back and forth like this, and the coil just gets fat on one side and skinny on the other. So if that happens to you, roll it up on the side, push it back down, and use broad strokes. Your coil should almost kind of roll by itself a little bit at the end of each roll. So I have my coil. I'm going to check the thickness. I'm good to go. It's the right length. So I'm just going to place it on my bat. To actually start the pot, you're going to start by making a very simple pinch pot base. You all know how to do that now. And I actually want to leave the walls a little bit thicker to begin with. I'm going to slip and score the first coil of the day. I always slip and score the first coil of the day, but every coil after that, if it's the same consistency, then I don't need to slip and score it. So why do I slip and score the first coil? What if I'm building this over a couple days? Why would I need to slip and score the first coil of the day? If this is leather hard and my coil is plastic, could I just blend them together? No, they'll fall apart. And every year there's somebody whose coil pot starts off beautiful, then it goes in the kiln and it becomes just little donut rings because they all fall apart. Once I slip and score the first coil of the day, if this is plastic and this is plastic, can I just blend them? Yeah. So I slip and score the first coil of the day, and to place it on, I just taper the end. That way there won't be a gap when I lay the coil on top. I'm going to slip and score in 2 different directions. I add my slip, And I'm going to place the coil on top. And notice where I tapered it, there's no gap. And I'm going to place the coil on. I want this to get wider, so I'm placing on the outside. See how my pot's now getting wider? Now I need to blend my coils, and I recommend you blend a coil at a time. I often see students place like 5 or 6 coils on top of each other, and it's much harder to blend. So I take my thumb, and I slip on this, so it's going to be a little bit trickier for this first coil. And I just pull the clay down. And I'm going to blend both the inside and the outside. Now I want to show you something on this coil right here. When I blend, I want this coil to be a little bit on the thicker side, because when I blend both sides, what's happening to the thickness of the coil? Yeah, it's getting much smaller, right? So if you have a really thin coil, and this is the biggest problem that I see, if students roll really thin coils, and then I try and blend each side, your walls become almost paper thin, and it's very difficult. That's why you want them about the thickness of your middle finger. So I'm going to blend, and I blend the inside by supporting the outside. Don't forget, working on scrap paper is really helpful to stop it from sticking to the table. And then you might still find that there's lumps and bumps. This is where a metal rib and a paddle come really in handy. So you can use the metal rib to kind of smooth out those lumps and bumps. And you can also use a paddle to tap the walls to make it nice and even. Now, because I told you to make your coils a little thicker, this is the little trick, the little cheat. Because you now know the pinch method, you can actually pinch those walls thinner and your pot grows much faster, right? So you've just cut out the middleman. You don't have to put as many coils on to get the pot the size or the shape that you want. So to add your next coils, you just use the knife that's in your toolkit. You cut off the end of the last coil. You cut off the end of your next coil. You just place them together. And you're just going to place the coil around. Again, you blend using your thumb. Notice the direction that I'm pulling the clay. It's opposite to the joint to really blend that clay down. I support the inside. Now you might decide, once you're done, you might have a little step. You can either add a coil till it blends, or you can blend this one and then just cut down the lip rim like we've done in the past. So at this point, once I've smoothed everything out, and for time's sake, I'm just going to keep moving, but you would take time on this. For time's sake, you can come and check this off with me and be done. Or if you want to turn this into something, you are welcome to. Let's say I wanted to turn this into a little cat. I might cut out ears. I would need to slip and score them on. You, of course, would spend a lot more time on this. If you wanted to keep it, you'd refine your edges. But I think you get the idea. I blend my joints, refine my edges. I'd also want to blend that joint on the inside. Then I could take a rubber tip tool and I could just add some details. And if you wanted it fired, you bring it up to me to check off with your initials and period on the bottom. And you could have that fired, and you could keep it as just a bonus bowl for you. Do you have to get it fired? No, if you don't want it fired, you would just wedge it right back up and reuse the clay. Any questions?